All right, I know I said that I wasn't gonna mess with this for a good while, but I just can't help myself. I really want to dive somewhat deeper into this, and I guess we'll get started here in a second. But there's just so much that needs done. Namely, we discovered last time trying to run it that the fuel tank has a hole in it, so we might start by taking that off and figuring out what we're going to do on that front. But anyway, we'll get going right after this. Welcome back. If you haven't seen my videos before, I'm Rusty Oliver Man, and this here is a little 1250 we saved from certain doom. And like I said, it's too cute to kill, but it's definitely got some struggles, and that is apparent if you just look at it. But let me get some of this sheet metal set off of here again, because it's just sitting on there. I didn't want it all over the place, and I didn't want the thing to get rain down in it, so I set the hood back on and that. But I'm gonna take that off and then I'll explain some things. Oh, I guess I could have took this panel off too, because we will need it off of there in a minute. All right, probably the first question I got the most from people that saw me in the community sailing by with this little feller was, what's up with those stickers? Well, that's homemade. Somebody painted this thing obviously too dark green, and then they decided that they were going to make custom decals, and that's why it says Italy 35 horsepower, not the way it should be. Secondly, we've got a lot of struggles here. Let me explain. So I bought this with knowing the fact that it was missing the water pump, the bolts, the fan, the pulley. That's what he said. Well, after checking parts book, there's a little more to it than that. There's actually another piece that adapts from here to the water pump, so on and so forth. I have located some pieces of this puzzle, but not the water pump itself. 674 234A, I think is the number of the water pump, that apparently does not exist anywheres. So if somebody out there has one, I would sure like it, even if it's used. It's better than nothing, which is what I have now. I have nothing. Hopefully in the mail, that will sort out some of that. Secondly, as previously stated, it's very obvious that much cobbling has gone on here as they tried to just prolong this little feller's life as much as possible. So we are far, far from original, and we're going to have to make that different as well, because this is not going to fly as it is. Essentially what they've done, and I'm not exactly sure either, because digging through my pile of books, for whatever reason, I do not have a 1250, a regular 1250 manual or shop manual. I have all the other Fiat shop manuals. I have all the other Fiat owners manuals. I have all the parts books, including for this, but I don't have the shop book or the owner's book, and I do now. They're in the mail. But not having that to look at right away, I can't answer some of the questions right now that I need to know, which is, originally this was 24 volt. This is a strange little bird, the gas version, more than the diesel. The gas version was made with an Italian military surplus engine that we see here, and the little feller just, there ain't no parts out there. And so that is the issue that we have right now. I don't know what I'm going to do exactly with the wiring. If I don't know how they handled this ignition system if the coil was a 24 volt coil, or if the coil was a 12 volt coil and it was stepped down somewhere along the line. The books will answer that question for me. I do, however, know that in their cobbling and changing over setup, and I might just get my stool here and take a seat because we'll be here a while. We have some issues here. The generator is in here, a 24 volt generator, which thank goodness it's still here. But the reason why is because you got to have it, because on the back of it is a shaft, and then your governor sits in here. So the governor runs off of the generator, and if they'd have taken the generator out, bye-bye, it wouldn't run. So strangely enough then, when their water pump went south, the guy said what they had done when he bought it, the way it was set up, they wedged a tube in that hole and they had an RV water pump set up to cycle the water through it so they could move it around, he said. Well, also what they did when they converted this to 12 volts with this alternator, which I assume is a 12 volt alternator of some rendition, I don't recognize what it came out of, they changed the pulley on the generator to a flat, like an idler pulley, so that now it runs on the back side of a belt. And that kind of creates another conundrum for us, because then what's going to happen is, if we would put it back to original, what will we do? Well, I think I located one of these, so I will have the other rendition. Now, if we were to leave this whole thing set up as 12 volt, and we could make it run on 12 volt, everything like it should. It cranked over surprisingly good on 12 volt. So I'm wondering if maybe the starter has been tampered with along the way, or they found something that would fit, but that looks like the original starter. But anyway, my point is, if we leave it as 12 volt, we're going to have to come up with some alternator setup. I don't like this conglomeration of sadness they've done, but we might get a mini alternator and tuck it in there somewhere where it's not hanging way out in the way, but it's still out here somewhere, in which case we may still leave this away, and the belt come around the water pump, loop under this, go around our 12 volt setup, go around our 12 volt setup, and then back to the crankshaft deal. I would be more inclined to mount it up a little bit higher so that it puts some tension on this more than what it is, because I feel like now this has the potential to slip a bunch. So if I would mount it up like here, I think I'd have enough room where the belt could still shoot down to the crankshaft and then be more tight on the back side of this as it would be lifted up. But that is a far, far away project. I'm gonna have to leave this right like it is now, because I can't control this without it. I need that tension. So just to hear it run, even though it pains me, I'm gonna have to leave this alone. I would not be opposed to putting it back to 24 volt if I could find all the necessary pieces to make this happen. But I don't know that that's really gonna happen. I still need the wiring diagram to figure out what they did and how they had it set up, if it was a special coil or what needs to happen, if there's something I can put in there that will cut the voltage down. What I could do is leave it charged on 24 volt and have the starter hooked up to 24 volt and then pull my power off of just one battery. I think that would work if I ran a wire all the way up to the front and just hooked it to one of the batteries that was in the series. I think, you know, I could get it where it was only pulling 12 volts to run everything that wasn't 24. So that is also an option that I have. But my biggest thing is going to be this water pump and how I deal with that. If I don't have a way to deal with that very good, I'm going to have a problem. I think that it's probably cooling off enough towards evening. I can probably turn this fan off, which is probably going to make you a lot happier, because I think it was pretty loud. behind me, but maybe I'm wrong on that. So anyway, the water pump thing is going to be a struggle of sadness unless somebody can help me out and come up with all the stuff I need. And another sadness of that is there's a service bulletin where they discontinued that original water pump and they added a different number, and then when you did that you had to have a different fan and spacer and different bolts. And if I could find that setup, that would be fine too, but I gotta find something that's gonna be in there the right way. And like I said, my plan A was a Charles City water pump I wanted to adapt in there, and I didn't find one that I thought fit in there very good, although I got a lot of quit in me. I just tried one off like a 1650. The pulley would be in the wrong spot and there wouldn't be enough room to make an adapter plate and use that. So my next plan, if I can't find any original stuff, is going to be trying to take a 1365 water pump and see if I can't make that adapt in there, in which case I'll make my own adapter plate here and then bolt the pump on the front if I can get the belts to line up. Another bad thing about that what they call the what do they call that in the parts book? The case? No, it's got a name. The backup for the water pump, whatever. That's also the place, I think, where your air cleaner mounts to the top of it. So you kind of need that for everything. That's also going to be another struggle when we try to figure out if we're going to do another charging system and leave this alone. My air cleaner is going to sit in here and we're not going to have room to have all this space. So that's another struggle we're going to have. Continuing our struggle, we have this Solex downdraft carburetor made in France, you see. I did find a kit online for this. It's $100. It appears to me like this one is not very good, and somebody has JB welded a ton on this little sucker. So that does not make me smile, because I'm almost sure that we're going to be going through that at some point, and that's probably not a findable carburetor. Which, again, don't be deterred. Somebody else made this. We can make it again. If push comes to shove, we might be able to make an adapter thing and find a carburetor that we can make work. This is a tiny little carburetor. It's a tiny little engine. If it's 35 horsepower, we could probably find a Chinesium carburetor on the Jungle Store that we could make work if we had to. And our governor is all down here in all this nonsense. So, you know, it's not like this is not doable. The biggest hurdle and the death of these would be the motor being locked up, and then when you try to get it all apart, you end up destroying it. So right now we're ahead of the curve, friends. Now, that being said about all of this nonsense and the electrical system, the crazy fuel system, the water pump situation of sadness, we can go to the other side. We can look at this. Our tank has a hole in it somewhere back under there. We're gonna have to pull that out here in a minute and figure out what's going on. This is not right here, according to the parts book. According to the parts book, there was a little block that went in here with a long banjo bolt through it, and in that block up threaded your sediment bowl, and then your banjo bolt went to that sediment bowl, and so on and so forth. So that's fine what he's done here temporarily, but I would rather have a sediment bowl. But another thing I don't know is what's on the back side of here to draw the fuel from the bottom. Right now it looks to me like you would have to have this much fuel before it would ever get up there. And certainly when I poured it half full of fuel to try to start it and then it all leaked out and left, it was seeming like that was the case. Like I didn't get enough fuel in there and it wasn't sucking any fuel up there. So that's how she goes. So we're going to have to just take this tank off and figure out how we're going to fix that. And we can run it on a temporary tank. With this electric fuel pump, we can run it out of a can with a longer hose. So we may do that to try to run it. But there's just so much stuff that we're going to have to sort out. This is going to end up being another tribute tractor, if you will. It's not going to be original by any means, but we're just going to have to live with it. I mean, look at this nonsense we've all got here of splicing. You know, that's just, it's sad. We're going to need a new coil. What we're going to do, one of the first things, we're going to run this on 12 volt to try it. We're going to get one of the good coils and we're going to junk all this. This is going to go away and we will make a nice deal. Sadly, I think originally that the coil was mounted up here and somebody has twisted off a bolt in there. So we may have to sort that out too, because I would like it back where it was original. But we got to figure out what that cover, that's what it's called in the parts book, figure out how that cover is made and how far it goes. I think it stops here and then these two holes are outside of that, and maybe it stops back there and follows that curvature. I don't know, but that will become apparent as we go on. I mean, look at the oil in it. Unless he just poured it in before I got there, it's still pretty clean. So I had high hopes that this may be a salvageable little tractor. It's certainly cute as a button, you know. It's just a shame that it's been cobbled on so much and that they didn't keep any of the original parts. That's what makes me sad. I wish I had all the stuff that they threw away, because I think I could make it much more better. Yeah. Where to begin? I said we were going to take the fuel tank off. So we'll get started with that. I'm curious to see what's behind here and figure out why that is the way that it is. And then I'm also curious to see how bad the hole is. If the hole would be small enough where we could use the old timer's trick of JB Weld on a self-tapping screw, we would go that route and probably put it back and live our happy lives, and maybe everything would be fine. I don't like welding on a gas tank because I do not enjoy a trip to the moon. And so I know there's ways about it. You can fill it full of water and hope for the best, but I don't know. I could send it off to a place. I sent off the 1855 fuel tank. They quoted me one price and then it was like 3 times higher than what it was quoted. But if it's a bad hole, I might have no choice. I did find one on the internet that said it was reconditioned and they wanted almost $300 with the shipping. So is this little tractor worth that much investment? If I can fix it with a self-tapping screw for now. And then once we get to loving it and driving it and find out that it's everything we ever wanted, then we go through and we change our ways. I don't know. Time will tell, friends, you know. It's just one of those. It's just one of those. That's what I'm trying to say. So, where to begin here, you know? Fuel tank. It is too hot in here. I'm going to turn that fan back on, so you're going to have to live with the noise. All right. We are going to attempt removal, starting with our banjo bolt. And of course, I grabbed the wrong socket. It's just one of those, you know. It's a 17, like most metric things are. Most of them are a 17. Again, I hope that fan's not too loud, but I enjoy being comfortable. And that's just the way she's gonna be. See, what I would assume, if they made it this way, I would assume that on the back side of this, there was some type of tube apparatus, and then it would go down into the tank to suck off the bottom there. But what do I know, friends? You know, it's just, what do I know? There's really nothing you could do to make it any different than that at this point. If whatever was in there is gone. Another potential thing we could do, but that would be sadness as well, is we could make wherever that place is underneath of the hole, we could make that a new place to, you know, put a bung in there or something. But I got ideas of what I could maybe do. I would have to put a tube on into a fitting, but then I still don't have enough room once I would start turning it in that it wouldn't rub the sides. It's always a problem when it rubs the sides, you know. I would have to leave it plenty long so that I could physically maneuver it in there. I don't know. It would be a feat of engineering to make that happen. I'm not saying that it couldn't happen, but it's gonna be something. Let's continue on our way now that I've started rambling again and I got lost in thought. That's the thing about this little tractor. Even before I bought it, I was looking at it on the internet, and I haven't been able to sleep at night thinking about all the stuff that maybe I could do to make this work. This is the kind of project I like, but at the same time it also frustrates my brain because I want it to work, and there's going to be our fair share of challenges here, and that's the thing, you know. Now that's going to probably twist off if we don't do something. So we're going to have to do this number here. Another bizarro design. They used like an isolator thing. This is another one we can't lose nothing because it don't make it anymore. Man, that is a long time for one side. Maybe that's all I need to take loose. It's interesting, if you watch that other video where I went through all the Fiat history on these, this, I mean, they were obviously proud of it in its day. This was much more streamlined than anything they'd ever made. This is essentially a Fiat 415. The Fiat 415 Petrol would be the official name, and I think the other one is a Fiat 415R, which would be the diesel. Two totally different tractors. The gas used the frame rails, and then this little motor is just sat right on top of there like that. The two tractors are nothing alike. From here forward, they're totally different. The diesel uses a stressed block. As a result, the front axle's totally different. I don't even know, some of the sheet metal is the same, but basically that's it. From here forward, they're two totally different tractors. And they learned a lot with these as far as the way not to do things. And then when they went to the next series, like the 1255, 1355, let me back up. They actually made what they call the 1250-A, which essentially is the same as what the 1255 became. Those little tractors were excellent. That design lasted until today. They still make them and sell them over in the sand countries over there. They farm with them. You can look on YouTube and there's videos of them, you know, restoring them and people using them, and I think they sold them as New Hollands. That was a good design that they came up with after this. When they learned all this failure, they kind of kept from here back and built on that. It's a different casting, but basically the same idea. From here back wasn't any problem. It was from here forward where all the sadness was in these motors. So anyway, you can go through that video and see all the different models and what they translate to in the Fiats, but this would be a Fiat 415. The predecessor to this was the 411R, and the 411RG was the gas version. And as to my knowledge, they were only sold over here as cockshuts, and probably not here. In Canada would be the closest they were to here. I think they're a cute little feller too. I wouldn't mind finding a cockshut 411R, but anyway, it is what it is. We got our hands full on this project before we worry about such as that. So I'm looking at this here. I don't really understand what's taking place there. So there's going to be some learning on that. It's an oil line that runs, well, no it's not. That's a drain. Is that the block drain? It is. Okay. So that's a cute little block drain back there that works pretty good yet. And then here's our line for our oil pressure gauge that goes up and changes into normal oil pressure stuff. It is still hooked up, but the glass is broken because some children of ill repute have totally destroyed everything for no reason, so that's great. But anyway, let's try to pull this tank off so we can see what the sadness. Well, the camera got hot, friends, but I'm here to tell you, this is sadness right here, what I just discovered. It's a good thing I really wanted this, because I don't think that that tank is probably savable. It looks like to me that what part of it doesn't have a hole in it, you know? Somebody has just went to town on it. Man, that sucks. I can probably fix it good enough with JB Weld and then get some of that tank liner that I roll around in there, but good grief. They have totally, like, it's a sadness everywhere you look. And I can't leave it like this. I mean, I'm gonna have to chisel that off because it's obviously not. I mean, that's the one where it was just pouring out of. Jeez. That really is sad. There is a drain in it. Potentially that's where we could tap into to, man, $250 ain't looking too bad right now, is it? Now down in there, it does look like at one time there was a tube back in there. I'm wondering if I can look down in there and see something. And it'll probably explode. Okay. Well, the good old camera is going to play too hot to play, so anyway, I looked down in there. We do in fact have a tube that runs way back in there, and then it comes over and it makes a straight down to the center of the tank. So as long as that doesn't have a hole in it, we should be good to go with drawing out of that hole there. This return line one has a conglomeration of tubing which runs all the way along here and then loops up around and I guess just drops out of the top. I don't know. I don't know why people do things that they do, but there we are. Now my cousin is kind of crazy, and he might be the guy to get to weld this tank up because he fears no explosion. So I might have to hit him up on that deal. See if he'll, you know, blow up his garage trying to fix this. But I think what I can do, and have done before with success, as long as there's no horrendously huge hole in this. I don't know why I picked it up when I'm holding the camera with one hand precariously. But if I clean all this trash off of here and figure out what I'm working with, if I clean this up real good and JB weld it and then I line the inside of the tank, it'll plug those holes no problem for a good while. Eventually it will probably start leaking again, but the trick is to let it dry for a long time. So I'm gonna have to get to work on that because that just breaks my brain. I mean, that is awful. I wish I had offered him less, but like I said, I wanted it, so I still got my money's worth in the tires and whatever. So let's still have faith. It's gonna be a good little runner, and it'll be cute as a button, and we will love it. So plus I got an 8-ball shifter. Find another 1250 that's got that. So where to proceed here? Well, we're gonna need to find us a longer end of hose so we can suck fuel out of a can. We're going to need to get us a battery that we can operate off of here. I put the other one back in the 4150. I used it the other day. But we need a battery to run our ignition and our coil, or well, that is ignition, our fuel pump is what I'm trying to say. If we can run our fuel pump and our coil, then what we can do is we will use the jump pack to crank again. Although it would be super nice to just push a button. I've got that remote starter. We could potentially use that. But yeah, it's a lot to wrap your mind around when you look at this little feller. That's the worst case scenario right there though for that tank. Man, I did not think it was gonna be totally garbage. I thought it'd have one little pinhole. I didn't know it had already been monkeyed with, so. Jeez. But I'm not worried because, remember, anything that was made can be made again. You know, that is kind of burned into my brain. I worked with a guy once who built pipe organs, and he told me that. We were talking about something I saw on TV out there in like Old Salem in the United States, and they found an organ from the 1700s that had been stored up in an attic, and kids had smashed it totally flat, and it looked like it was not salvageable. And that guy said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "That can all be fixed." He said, "Anything that was made can be made again." And that's kind of in my brain. He's right. I mean, if somebody else did it, you can do it too. So we will figure it out. It's just a matter of time, you know. So what do we want to do here? I would really love to hear it run, but I really don't know if I have enough stuff to make that thing happen. Why do we have two wires coming off of this? That's a puzzle too. I would love to know from, I just would love to know that from the wiring diagram, because from what I see, how in the world would that work? Look at that. It's essentially bypassing this resistor, because one wire's going into one side of it, and then the other wire is going into the other side of it, and then spliced also to the coil. I don't get that. We're gonna have to unravel that and see what's actually under here. Or we could just break that off and not use it for now, which might be the way to go. Wow, the sadness abounds, you know. We know the clicky clack works, so we can tie into this, get a longer hose to our gas can, and then I just feel like the other day when we tried it, our carburetor was not carbureting, but we also weren't getting any fuel through here, which makes me question how good that tube is in the tank. Wow, it's a lot of head scratching, you know? A lot of head scratching. Talk about sadness right there, friends. 1 hole, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, just off the top of my head, and I bet if I cleaned it up, I'll find a lot more. Well, my cousin said he would weld this for me, but I don't know if I want to subject him to that risk, because if it would kill him, I'd probably feel a little guilty about that. On the other hand, he's got stuff he wants me to work on for him, so he wants to trade labor for labor. But as far as I see it, we would have to cut it back to here, and then along this seam, and then over here, and then up to this ridge, and just weld a whole patch in it, and not be too worried about this drain, because that probably wouldn't be happening anymore. But I don't know. I don't know what I want to do. He could, in theory, once he gets the piece cut out of there, he could cut this drain out and then stick it back, drill a hole, and I don't know, weld it around there. I don't know what I want to do. Fill it full of water. The problem is, like he said too, he wants to fill it full of water. I hope the gas cap's tight enough that you can fill it full of water, because you ain't gonna fill it full of water the normal way, because there's nothing. I mean, that's not gonna hold back water. Gonna have to clamp something on there, or I'm gonna have to just pay $250 and get a new one. Listen to how full the tank is of junk. Well, I don't know if I'm brave enough to tackle it or not. Fill it full of water, let it sit, it should be fine. You could also light it on fire, and if it goes boom, then you know it's not safe. But I don't know. I don't know what I want to do. I guess ignorance is bliss, you know? Find somebody who just doesn't fear anything, or has no reason to live. But I don't know. I mean, it just looks like garbage. Maybe I'll just buy a new one. I mean, is that a hole as well? I think that was just a overspill from... I don't know. A lot of cleaning would be necessary on that piece before you could ever do anything to it. And it would just be a lot easier to just zip that out of there, put a new piece in, be done with it. If he wants to cut this drain out and weld around this thing here, then that would be something. But if not, that would be the way. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I don't know. Just one of those things I find myself in, you know? I think I'll just clean it up and mark it with a marker, and if he wants to do it, who am I to question his ability? But I'm gonna have to leave this video here, because I'm not gonna take a coil off something else. I'll go buy a new coil and we'll start over, and we'll get some hose so we can reach our bucket. We'll make that happen. Then we'll see if we get fuel to the carburetor, if I can make this thing run as it sits. And then after we do that, we will tackle the water pump of sadness and all that nonsense. We'll have to figure that out. We'll have to see if any of our governor stuff actually works. I mean, I guess it probably did run, but it probably didn't run very good, is what I'm saying. So, and it couldn't run for long if all your fuel leaked out. So we're gonna have to do a little bit of maneuvering here, friends, and then whatever happens, happens. I guess we'll call this one here, and next time we'll try to do a will it run and see if we can actually make it run. But for now, we've assessed the situation, we figured out what our fuel leak was, and we are ready to make something happen in the next one. Do you suffer from low intelligence and are easily entertained? Well, then hit that thumbs up button and leave a comment. And that way we can keep making entertainment that your feeble minds can understand. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.